Man, the Vshojo situation sucks. I'm sure there's already dozens, if not hundreds, of videos that are already talking about what happened and go into depth about all the craziness and all that. I just want to give my personal thoughts on things, and not go into too many details about what's going on. Of course, we'll talk a little about some things that I'm aware of that has been discussed as they're kind of key points here. So, in summary, is that we're finding out that Vshojo was doing a lot of shady stuff behind the scenes that has led to basically every single talent leaving in the last few days. This shady stuff includes embezzling money, including $500,000 for charity, not paying their talents and artists. At least one person was leaking personal information about certain talents, um, leading on potential new talents and making them pay thousands of dollars worth of assets and other stuff for pre-reveals, bad mouthing ex talents to current talents, emotional manipulation, and just general financial mismanagement. Um, so let's be honest, it's a complete shit show. I cannot imagine creating a VTuber support corporation claiming to be talent first and then fucking it up this badly. Um, it is insane to me. But let's also keep in mind, as this is a massive subject with a spotlight on it right now, anything you hear should be taken with a grain of salt if it doesn't come directly from the talent themselves or someone who is directly impacted by this, such as, unpaid artists or potential talent that was going to be joining, stuff like that, right? Don't listen to just some Tom, Dick, or Harry YouTuber or streamer or whatnot who doesn't have a leg in the race about what's going on, as all their stuff is going to be coming from third party or just be guesswork a lot of the time. So yeah, if it doesn't come from someone directly impacted by it, just don't worry about it. Okay, things are already bad enough without needing to make up things or spread false information. So just keep it good, right? There's also a lot that can't be discussed due to ongoing legal action and NDAs. So I do know some people have said, oh, well, NDAs don't cover, illegal activity. And while that is true, it's not really that you can discuss it with everyone if they're doing something illegal. It's mostly that you can contact like lawyers and the authorities and the justice system. If an NDA has something that's protecting something illegal, if only after a judge says yes, that is in violation, that NDA does not hold up. After that, you can then talk to the public about it. So do keep that in mind, as I know some people have been like, oh, well, since they're doing illegal stuff, you don't have to worry about the NDAs, right? Just ignore all that, right? Don't spread misinformation, basically, right? But man, it is so shitty. As a VTuber fan, as someone who has followed a lot of the talents before they joined Vshojo, before Vshojo even existed, um, it sucks to see all this bad stuff happen to them. I followed Iron Mouse and Melody as some of the first two VTubers that I had ever followed back when VTubing had first started out. I believe first I had kind of seen some clips about like Kizuna Ai and some of the Japanese VTubers, and I was like, this is kind of cool, but I don't really speak Japanese. I can't really follow what's going on unless there's subtitles and all that. And then I think I was at one point just watching a normal person streaming, and in my sidebar I saw like this cute anime picture or something like that, and I think it was Melody I saw at that time, and I was like, oh, this person looks cool, and turns out she really was cool, right? And then from that rabbit hole I started watching other people who would just kind of show up in my suggested feed, and I found Mouse that way and all the others and stuff like that. So yeah, I watched like Zentreya and Haruka and Giga before they joined as well. But I also found a lot of people who were enjoyable to just watch through them joining Vshojo. Um, like Henya or Matara and all them who, joined in after various things and all that. But the thing is, I didn't watch them because they were part of Vshojo, right? I did it because they were genuinely entertaining individuals, right? And I think as a whole, that's what you should be doing anyway. You shouldn't really care about what organization someone's a part of. You shouldn't care like what their character, is of or looks like or whatever. You should care about the person themselves and the content they create, right? Because someone could have the most elaborate, crazy, insane, like VTuber model, uh, and if they're just bland and unentertaining, it wouldn't matter. No one's going to watch them, right? But thankfully, unlike other organizations, the talents of Vshojo get to keep their IPs and their models and everything. So not much is going to change with them going indie. So, make sure to keep giving your continued support to everyone that you previously did, as nothing will change from them going forward. Right. So yeah, it just really sucks. Because honestly, I thought Vshojo would be different than other scummy companies. Especially since the streamers get to keep their IPs and everything, and all the talents who had joined had good things to say about it, and it seemed like that was the truth, right? I remember some people saying, "Oh, well, Vshojo made me get a lawyer to look over the contract before I signed it," and stuff like that, and oh, they helped me out by doing XYZ, and stuff like that, like good, cool stories about stuff that the company had did, but I think we really all should have been a lot more suspicious, to be honest. Um, yeah, it sucks. And honestly, I think the huge first red flag for me should have been when Yanners left, and then immediately after, her and Mouse basically completely ceased streaming together. Because before that, they would, be constantly collabing, having a great time together, doing stuff. They'd be messing around in VR and all that, right? Some of the greatest streams that we had from that time were Iron Mouse and Yanners, collabing in VR, watching firework displays, going through the Disney World and all that kind of stuff. Really great times, but then they all just stopped and something. So it definitely seems like there was some sort of NDA or something sketchy behind the scenes that caused it to suddenly stop. There was also Silver and Vebe who had quit around the same time. Their contracts were up, right? It had been about a year since they had joined, so them leaving was like, oh, okay, so their contracts just ran out, and maybe they just didn't agree on terms or something. So I wasn't too suspicious about that. And both of them, from what I had watched of their streams, they always did a lot of solo streaming stuff anyway, so it wasn't like them not streaming with the others who were still in Vshojo was a surprise. It was just kind of what they did, right? So I was like, okay, whatever, not too bad. Um, and even what happened to Matara was kind of understandable from my perspective, because from what I heard about how Vshojo made their money, it was mainly through merch sales, and they didn't take any of the streaming earnings or anything like that. So with Matara, I remember that she had kind of made some merch through a third party. So I could see how the Vshojo would not like that and didn't want her to do that, since they wouldn't be making any money off of that merch, right? Since they weren't the ones who had a hand in it, something like that. Uh, so I can understand that, right? But if that was the case, that she was doing that because Shoujo maybe wasn't paying artists and such, that it would make a whole lot more sense. But that's just speculation on my part. Because after all, we found out that there's a bunch of artists apparently that have gone without getting paid for their work for potentially months or more, which is crazy. And yeah, I could definitely see if, a company's not going to be paying the artists and you want to make sure artists are paid, you're going to kind of want to do something yourself. So that might be why Matara went with like a third party merch rather than deciding to go through Vshojo. Apparently, there's also been some shipping issues with merch from Vshojo stores and stuff like that, which is unfortunate. But yeah, again, all just kind of speculation at the moment on my part. Haven't heard anything concrete about any of that. So yeah, it's just kind of a shitty situation all around, right? But speaking of artists and other like third-party staff, people who have made, music and helped with, concerts and all that kind of stuff. yeah, a lot of them just haven't been getting paid for their work, which is insane to me. As someone who frequently commissions artists, I just can't understand it. And some have even said that, like I had mentioned previously, they've been waiting months for payments or even payments for multiple different projects. Uh, and it's so fucked up that multiple former talents, including Mouse, Zen, and Giga, the only three that I've heard mention it so far during streams or saw tweets about, but others are probably doing the same, I would assume. They're asking artists who haven't been paid for their work to reach out to them to finally get paid. So yeah, it's like I said, a mess. But if you're an artist, I want to express to you how important it is that you get your money and stand up for yourself, especially when you're facing a corporation. If you aren't getting paid and they're asking you for more work, that's a huge red flag. If they tell you that they'll pay you soon, but weeks or months are passing by, that's a huge red flag. In all honesty, you should be charging an upfront fee, either a full price of what you're going to be doing for them, or around half, like an estimated price or something like that. That's what almost every single artist I've ever commissioned will do. Never do work with the promise of future payment. And if a client's a corporation or whatnot, if they seem a little suspicious to you and you need payment from them, you probably are not alone. So honestly, it's a bit surprising to me that all of this information is coming out after Mouse had to be the one to kind of break the news about it when artists hadn't been paid for months. Because if it were me and a few weeks had passed by, and I'd start looking at the company or the client or whoever hadn't paid me, look for people who had worked with them recently as well, and I'd have been like reaching out and be like, hey, have you gotten paid by such and such? They, haven't paid me, so I just wanted to see, you know, and if there were multiple people, I would have called out that company or the client immediately. Uh, it's weird because I know a lot of like the artists are like friends with each other too who have been affected. Like they know each other, they probably talk at sometimes. So it's weird that it never came up like, hey, I haven't been paid. Another person says, oh yeah, I haven't been either. That's weird. You think that, something would have come up and they'd have like called it out sooner. But it's weird because anytime there's like drama surrounding people getting mistreated, like people not getting paid or stuff like that, you can look back throughout a bunch of years and see this trend where when something gets called out, immediately afterwards, a bunch more people come forward and say, yeah, this happened to me too, with this person or with this organization, and it wasn't just one victim, right? So if you're being treated unfairly, even if you seem like you're alone, even if everyone is saying good things about who's treating you unfairly, call it out because you never know when they might be faking it as well, right? So just do that. Vshojo also apparently had a number of people who were formerly going to be joining, but were kind of in like a limbo state for around a year or more, maybe? Like, some of who were told not to stream until their debut happened, or who had been spending money out of pocket for some things, only to have that now fall through with everything going on. Like, imagine that. Imagine dedicating weeks or months of your life to an audition for something. You get accepted and told that you'll be debuting on this specific date, only for the people that are supposed to be managing you to be pushing the date back over and over again. And then it comes out that all of this stuff happened, the financial mismanagement, the mistreatment of people, all this stuff, and you discover that all the work you've been doing is for a company that's corrupt as hell. From my understanding, all of the talents who were pending debut and Vshojo have immediately withdrew and will no longer be joining, which I think is completely understandable. Because who would want to work for an organization that stole money, essentially, and who does things behind people's backs? And it's just all around seemingly scummy as hell at this point. I think the only VTubers left in Vshojo are the Japanese Nova girls, as they are kind of separated from the English talents and have a separate management team. I know Keisan did a stream where she talked to the Japanese CEO, and it sounds like even the Japanese CEO is in like a tough spot and basically under the thumb of the English group, including their finances. I think he mentioned somewhere that um, rather than having the Japanese and English groups separated with finances, the English is kind of like in charge of the finances, and the Japanese group gets like a budget from that, something like that. Uh, Unfortunately, I also believe that the personal detail leaker was a member of the Japanese staff, so the Japanese group isn't completely detached from the chaos either. Um, I do hope that the Japanese branch can get things together, clean house of all the bad actors, and continue, even if the English branch does not continue. Uh, I never really watched any of the Japanese girls due to language barrier, but I do wish them well. And I do hope that they can continue streaming and having a good time, even if they have to do it as indie. But from what the Japanese CEO said, he and a lot of the staff there at the Japanese Vshojo group, they do want to see the talents, continuing on and being supported. And even though I know Henya and Keisan have formerly quit Vshojo, the Japanese CEO said that he would still like assign people to them to make sure the transition went smoothly and everything was taken care of and all that, and kind of doing what they can. It even kind of sounded like the Japanese CEO was not sure how much longer he would remain CEO there as well. It sounded like he was really just waiting to quit too, but he wanted to kind of stay on board to help the talent continue through a transition of this thing. So, like I said, huge mess, pretty chaotic. I do know that a lot of people, including myself, are kind of hurt by this Vshojo situation. The talents obviously are just a mess right now, having to deal with the stress of all this, quitting, the financial issues, the emotional manipulation. Uh, it's just a mess. You can go watch any of their videos and you'll understand, the stuff they're going through. Obviously, they cannot talk about, everything because of NDAs, because of ongoing legal action and stuff like that. But you can get a good grasp of what's somewhat going on there. But yeah, like the fans, third-party supporters, like artists and all that. A lot of people are just unhappy about this whole situation, which rightfully so. Most of us thought that Vshojo was a good, wholesome company. We saw it as a bastion of wholesomeness, that if a VTuber that had lost their IP at a black company, like one of the Japanese ones, for example, they could, join Vshojo and have a good time and be welcomed in, and everything would be hunky-dory, peachy pie. But apparently, Vshojo is a black company too. It honestly looks like all VTuber companies are just horrible experiences. The best thing for VTubers seems to be like smaller groups that support each other, like Vichiban, rather than a rigid, structured organization with executives and such who most often are not VTubers themselves, or might not even know anything about really VTuber culture or anything like that, who are just kind of out of touch and just really in it for the money, right? So yeah, it kind of sucks. And I think we should all take this as a warning to be more cautious of companies. If you're a VTuber thinking of joining a company, make sure you have a lawyer check over your contract before you sign. And definitely, see any red flags, don't be afraid to walk away. I'd also suggest trying to get like some sort of exit clause or something for early contract termination, such as in the event of scummy stuff like this all going on, like embezzlement, staff spreading personal info around, staff harassing employees, etc. Just make it so that if the company's doing scummy things, you're able to leave without being stuck there until the end of your contract, right? Because, I mean, just think of it this way. If you're part of a group that is apparently doing a lot of bad things, a bunch of people leave, but you stay there, it doesn't look good for you, because it seems like you're still there kind of defending the group, right? Even though you're bound by contract and couldn't legally leave. So make sure you have that exit clause in there. So if you need to leave to protect yourself and all that, it's in there and you can do so, right? But just regardless of who you are, what your profession is, or if you're, just a fan, just never trust companies in general, especially companies that make their employees sign NDAs that don't allow them to say why they left in the first place. Some NDAs are fine. It's understandable. They're needed to protect certain operational things of a company, or protect private information of other companies, or other employees, I should say. But it's extremely shitty to have things that are like, yeah, sign this NDA and you're not allowed to talk about why you're leaving, and then attack that person, insult them, and insinuate certain things, and then they aren't able to defend themselves because they sign an NDA and they cannot break it or threat of legal action. It is a mess, right? Like, NDAs are cool, okay? If you're part of a VTuber organization, obviously you're going to want to sign an NDA to not only protect your identity, but also make sure that the identity of the other VTubers are not leaked, right? You just sign that NDA because it's like, if I leak so-and-so's identity, legal action can be taken against me, right? That makes sense. What doesn't make sense is, yeah, I cannot tell you why I left because I signed an NDA. It makes no sense, right? Right. It's always suspicious if there's a NDA that you cannot say why you left. And if anyone says, like, if you ask someone why they quit and they give you kind of a roundabout answer, they probably had to sign an NDA, and that's a big red flag, so you know that company's going to be bad. Okay? But yeah, so Vshojo is basically going to collapse, right? How could any VTuber organization survive without talents? And who would want to join after learning what we have now? At the end of the day, the organization doesn't make the talents who they are. The talents that make the organization. That's why Vshojo was supposed to be talent first, but it turned out that it wasn't. I will continue to watch my favorite streamers, I'll support them, and all that. I never paid much attention to Vshojo as an organization as it was. I only really cared if they mentioned a new person joining so I could check them out. For me, as a fan, nothing is really going to change. The VTubers I watch that are now ex-Vshojo, they may struggle to do grand projects like they were doing before with the support structure of a large organization. But in the long run, I think not having to deal with the nonsense that apparently they've been dealing with will bring them less stress and make them happier. There'll definitely be struggles and unhappiness in the weeks, if not months, to come, with ongoing legal battles and all this other stuff being straightened out. But just remember, bad times don't last forever. Brightest diamonds are formed under the highest pressure. I hope that everyone can come out of this all right and shines even brighter than before. And I hope that one day soon, Mouse and Yanners can reunite on a stream, free from the garbage of Vshojo that separated them. Well, that's going to be all from me, folks. Make sure to support all your favorite streamers, content creators, whether they're VTubers or Fleshtubers alike, and support your artists as well. Alright? And finally, I will be adding the donation link to the Immune Deficiency Foundation that Iron Mouse had posted previously down in the description of this video. So donate if you can. If you can't, donate plasma. If you can't do either, just stay happy. and enjoy the content that is out there for you to enjoy. Thank you all, and have a good rest of your day.